Starting the game with e4 if you are playing white can be very discouraging, especially if you don't know much theory. And that's because you have to memorize so many variations. You gotta have a response against the French defense, Caracan, Sicilian defense, open game, so you gotta be ready for a lot of things. And that's why many beginner chess players prefer to just play d4 so you don't have to memorize as many variations right from the start. And if you ask me for an advice, I would highly recommend you to play the Colle system, especially the Colle Zukertort system. A lot of people might recommend you to play the London system, but that one is very widely known. People have lots of counter attacks against it, so maybe playing something that is not as popular can be an advantage for you. And today we're going over this game played by no one less than Wesley So against Magnus Carlsen in 2017. And Wesley So ended up winning this game as white against the strongest chess player of all time, Magnus Carlsen, as black. And to play the Colle Zukertort system, or even the Colle system itself, you just have to memorize more or less where your pieces go. It's more like a system than an opening theory in itself. The structure is very similar to the London system, so if you are familiar with that, it's going to be very easy to understand this one. So to begin with, I'm going to show you more or less where the pieces go and the configuration you should aim for when you're playing the Colle system, especially the Colle Zukertort system that was played in this game, and then we can follow up with the game itself. So let's take a look here. We have it on the Lichess database, and the first move, of course, played by Wesley So in this game was d4. And Magnus played knight f6. This might be in a different order. Move orders might change here, so your opponent might play d5 here instead of knight f6 first. But the order doesn't affect very much. You can still play the same moves, and that's one of the advantages of playing the Colle system or playing d4 systems in general, because you don't have to adapt too much your play against what your opponent does, and no matter what they do, you can follow up with your moves regardless. So your main structure that you're going to aim for here, the main setup, is playing d4 and developing your knight here to f3, so you can start clearing the way for castling kingside, which is going to be your goal. And after you play these two moves, you're probably going to aim for e3, defending, overprotecting this d4 pawn. People don't like that very much because it's going to block the bishop, but this bishop is going to come free later on in the game when we aim to push this pawn to e4, which is one of the goals that we have in this opening. So we're going to play e3, and then we're going to play bishop here to d3. And this is a very similar setup to the London. Just the difference is that this bishop is going to be here in the London system and not in the starting square. But we have one move up. When we don't move this bishop and leave it here, we are just advancing our plan without having to touch this bishop yet. And we're going to move it later on. So we're going to push here, develop the bishop, and we're going to aim for castling short. Another move that is pretty common here after we make those moves is, if you're playing the Colle system, you can push c3 to protect this pawn. Or if you're playing the Colle Zukertort system, you're going to play b3 and fianchetto the bishop. This knight is usually going to come here, just like in the London system. So the only difference between the Colle system and the Colle Zukertort system is that this pawn comes here in the Colle system to protect the central pawn, and in the Colle Zukertort system, this pawn comes here so you can fianchetto your bishop. But your knight's gonna come here, your pawn's gonna advance, you're going to put your bishop here and castle short. This is pretty much the same structure for any Colle system, and one of the main goals of this setup is to just try to advance for e4 and, you know, exchange some pieces here in the center. So what happened in this game was Magnus played e6 and then Wesley played e3. He's following the same structure, the same moves that we play in the Colle system. Usually your opponent is going to play d5 first and then the knight and then the pawn, but Magnus is just switching the move order for some reason. Might be some preparation or something, but the point here is no matter what they do, it's gonna end up pretty much the same. So now they play d5, so we reach the same position through a transposition. And here Wesley plays bishop to d3 just like the plan, preparing for castling next move. And here Magnus plays bishop to d6, but instead of castling right away, Wesley decided to play b3 and fianchetto, or prepare the fianchetto for the next move. Magnus castled, and then Wesley decided to castle. And after c5, then in this situation, in this moment, Wesley decided to fianchetto. And this move is very common, trying to hit the pawn here. In the normal Colle system, they push c3 here to overprotect this pawn. But in the Colle Zukertort system, this move is actually discouraging any advancements here from black, because this pawn is covering this square as well. So it's not going to happen very easily. Here, Wesley decided to fianchetto the bishop, and after c takes, e takes, we have this position where we have the central pawn here, and the bishop is fianchettoed. We know that the only move left to complete our setup is to develop the knight here to d2. And that's exactly what Wesley does after Magnus plays his knight out. He plays knight b to d2, developing the last minor piece remaining. Knight b to d4, knight b4 was played, hitting the bishop, so Wesley is going to react to that by just dropping the bishop back. And after b6 to fianchetto the bishop, that's the idea here from black, to play the bishop here and develop that bishop that is, still hitting this pawn right here in the pawn chain. It's not going to be very easy to develop. So here Wesley played knight to e5, centralizing the knight. And after bishop was developed, Wesley played a3 to kick this knight away and try to come back here with the bishop. So that's exactly what happened. This knight retreated and Wesley played the bishop here. So what Magnus is going to try to do now is try to reroute this knight in a way that is trying to attack this bishop again, maybe in the future, somehow like this, in a way that it can hit this bishop again. You're going to see that knight move a lot here. So rook was to the open file here. That was the Magnus move. This half open file is very good for the rook. So Wesley played rook to e1 again, putting a rook to the half open file. The knight is going to start moving around. Queen to e2 was played. Knight to g6, you see, trying to reroute the knight, probably trying to come here or here, something like this. And Wesley sees that, so they play. He plays g3, taking away some squares from the knight. And so this knight cannot move any further. Computer says that the best move is to just retreat the knight again. Magnus didn't do that. He played b5, which is an inaccuracy according to the engine. Then Magnus played rook a to c1, holding on to this pawn that is a little bit backwards. A6 was played, b4. So we have some action here on the queen side. Bishop takes here, and then he recaptured with the pawn, hitting the knight here. Knight has to move. Magnus played knight to e4. And after bishop to d4, queen to g5, knight f3, hitting the queen. Queen just moved out of the attack. c3 was played. And here, rook to c4 was played. Computer says this is an inaccuracy by Magnus. Knight to d2 was played. And then after knight takes, bishop takes, we're going to see a massive set of trades here. Bishop takes. Magnus recaptures, and then Wesley captures the knight. Queen takes, pawn takes. And in this position here, Wesley So is winning by 2 points. So this is +2 for white. White has the pair of rooks here. So they are up in exchange. So they have the rook for the bishop. You can see that there are some pawns here on this side, but they are doubled. And Wesley So also has the majority here on the queen side. So the plan is very simple here. The idea is to just try to push these pawns and try to make a queen here on the queen side. And that's exactly what Wesley does to win the game. And knowing that Magnus is a monster in endgames, this should be still a challenge for Wesley, according to the history that Magnus has of being a great endgame player. But Magnus actually didn't win this game. Wesley managed to convert, and there are multiple moves here. But you can see that Wesley is going to advance the pawns on the queen side and try to promote to a queen over there. So here, you can see the pawns are being pushed. Magnus is trying his best to block the pawns. Wesley takes the pawn, trades one of the pawns over there. Back to the king, still moving, but the idea here is the plan is very simple. They're just trying to... Wesley is just trying to promote the pawn on the queen side, and that's exactly what ends up happening in this position. Okay, so that's why this system, the Colle system, is a very simple system to be played for even beginners, and it's played on even on high levels, just like this example right here. We have top players like Wesley So and Magnus playing this system. Wesley So ended up winning against Magnus using the Colle system. We can see here Wesley just converting the game, pushing the king here, bringing the king closer. Pawns were traded. Rook, a pair of rook is traded here in this situation. E3, he takes, and here it's just impossible. This move was a blunder. And after this capture, Wesley was actually able to promote. And after this move is just game over. Magnus resigned, and Wesley won the game. So this is pretty much it for this video, guys. That's how you should play if you are trying to avoid theory and go for an opening that is easy to play. It doesn't have too much theory, and it's still very powerful. I would recommend using the Colle Zukertort or maybe the Colle system, which is a good alternative for any players in any levels. Thank you very much for watching the video. Consider liking, commenting down below, and subscribing to the channel for more. And as always, I see you guys in the next one.